Huge shout out to Breno, the video team, creative team. Like, that's good stuff. That first video is good. We can give them applause. Yes. It's so important. Everything we do here at Netcast has purpose, and I hope you know that. We don't ever want to put out content or videos because it's cool or it's unique or different. It's like, man, we have a creative team and we have a team, the video team, that wants to tell the story of God through the people of God. And it's so much intentionality behind all that. And I just thank God for them and their passion and the fact that I can't even make a phone video, much less whatever they were just doing. So praise God for that. It looked amazing. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Netcast. We've been in a series on Jonah, the reluctant revival, for quite a few weeks. And last week, Matt talked about the pitiful revival. I love how I did the pastor thing, a little play on words there for you. He talked through Jonah for weeks and weeks, and it was wonderful. And now we are turning our attention to a new series that we begin today called The Invitation. And what we want to look at over the next few weeks is how powerful an invitation can be. How one invitation can change the course of a life, can change history. Invitations are wildly powerful. We're going to be talking about invitations in the Bible from God to us and invitations that we can offer others. And so in doing this series and thinking about it and in thinking about this morning, I'm preaching this week. I'll be preaching again next week, and Eddie will be the week after that. And we're going to talk about these invitations from the Bible, but we began talking about invitations that we've had that have changed the course of our lives, the power of an invitation that took the course of our life down a totally different road. So I'm going to share my story with you. I'm going to share my invitation that came to mind. And that was an invitation that I offered to a girl that I had known since my sophomore year of high school. Her name at that time was Deshae Rochelle Vince. And we got to know each other. I kind of moved around a lot as a kid. Didn't have any one place that I called home. Was a rambling man. You know, I was just moving around a lot. And so we landed in Louisiana my sophomore year of high school. And I met this girl named Deshae. We became great friends. And as lots of 10th graders without the confidence, high schoolers and middle schoolers, I didn't really have the guts to go for it, but my best friend did. And so this girl, Deshae Vince, she ended up dating my best friend for quite a while. But let me tell you something to all the high schoolers and middle schoolers. You hang around long enough, good things can happen. So all you have to do is loom far enough in the distance that there's a little separation and you're there to catch, but not so far that you're a creeper. And so I kept a pretty good distance, definitely maintained a friendship, and when that all fell apart, you know, you just kind of swoop in there. We had a little moment in high school that sort of fizzled out, but we maintained a really great friendship. The one thing we had in common was just being great friends. And so some of you guys in the room that you're not married, but you're really friends with a girl, you're hoping to turn that corner, you're caught in the friend zone, there is a way out. And it's through an invitation, which I'll tell you in a second. So we stayed friends for quite a while, kind of fell out of touch in later college. My girlfriend didn't like her. Her boyfriend didn't like me. I'll give you the whole story if you ever want it. And it was in the days where if you got a new cell phone, all your numbers didn't all transfer. I don't know if anybody remembers that world, but you get a new phone and you're like, so stupid, because you got to plug it into this dumb contraption. And then cell phone companies started paying to transfer all your data, and they're now all gone. You know, great job, Cellular South or whoever you are. And it's like, you would have to do all this mess. You're just like, forget it. I don't even care anymore. I'm going to put the 4 numbers in that I know, and it doesn't even matter. So I got a random text message on a new phone one Thanksgiving from this number that said, Happy Thanksgiving. And I responded with, who dis? Like, I don't know who this is. And this person on the other end was wildly offended. And I found out that it was Deshae. She was just so offended that I didn't have her number saved, that she wasn't one of the top numbers. We kind of struck up a friendship again after college. You know, the friendship came, we'd hang out a couple of times. You know, I don't know, it was like once every 3 months, then kind of once every other month, and sort of once every month, and like every other week, and then sort of every week. And it was just, we just developed a friendship. So she thought I was angling. But so she says I've always been in love with her. This is a real thing in my marriage. She says I've always been in love with her, and I told her that is something I will take to my deathbed. And then I may confess to her how long it's been. But so we maintained this really awesome friendship, and then I got an invitation to go to a friend's wedding. And anytime you're a single guy and there's a girl, a woman, a lady that you have your eye on, a wedding is such a great way to get that in. Because it's like, it's not a date, but you got to dress up. I got to look nice. I'll drive. Anything that happens on the way, I'll pay for it. It was all very calculated or romantic or whatever. And so this is a 100% true story. I pull up to her house and everything felt different. Just felt different. I invited her to this wedding and she said yes. And so I show up to her house and for whatever reason, I'm not a nervous person if you know me at all. I'm not like generally like nervous purpose, but I was so anxious, so nervous. She opens the door and just looks breathtakingly beautiful. We have a wonderful night. True story, she would tell you. She ends up kissing me, so you're welcome. So waiting that long. You should also see our wedding tape where she came 90, I came 10. She's never let me forget that. But that was years and years ago, and now 2 children later, over 10 years of marriage later, Deshae Rochelle Vince became Deshae Vince Boyd, and one invitation to a wedding that she said yes to changed the course of my life. Invitations can be wildly powerful. One invitation, the right meeting, the right interview, the right school, the right friendship, whatever it is, one invitation can change everything. And so this morning and for the next few weeks, we're going to spend time looking at the power of invitations. And this morning, I want to look at an invitation that comes from Jesus. And this is going to be in Matthew chapter 4. So it's going to be on the screens, but if you want to turn there, you can. But I want to be careful because sometimes when we look at stories like this from the Bible, it's easy to distance ourselves because it's a story that happened a long time ago. It's easy to kind of keep everything at arm's length. And I want to be careful because this invitation isn't in the Bible because it was a story for then and there. This invitation is in the Bible because this is a message and an invitation for here and now. And so I want to look at this together. Matthew chapter 4, verse 18. Are you ready? Yes. Fantastic. Maybe we'll get there. Okay. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he, meaning Jesus, saw 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, he invited them, listen, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Look at the first word of verse 20. What does it say? Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets, and he called them. He invited them. Verse 22, what's the first word? And immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. And now, if you've been around church for any length of time, if you've been around religion for any length of time, especially a Christian religion, you've probably heard this story. This is a story of when Jesus calls his first disciples. This story is probably not new. But I think it's one of those stories we kind of breeze over, or you heard a message one time where the pastor went all in on like the fishing analogy and like, you know, make your lure more attractive, you'll catch more people. And it's like out of context, it has a really weird, creepy message. And this morning, I think I don't want to just breeze through it and do something like cliche with it. I want to really drill down and focus on the invitation of Jesus, because the setting of this story, what happens in this story is wild. Jesus, who hadn't done all his crazy miracles yet, had really been working as a carpenter under his father for decades. He shows up, right? He had started to come on the scene as a teacher. He hadn't really been to rabbinical school. He wasn't a fully trained Jewish teacher, but he's got something to say. It's recognized. He walks by the Sea of Galilee, comes to these people who are in the middle of their job. And the invitation isn't, hey, let's do dinner tonight at 6 o'clock, and then I've got something to share with you. While they are in the middle of doing the things, Jesus says, follow me. Follow me. And sometimes we can dilute the trust that it took for these original disciples to follow Jesus because we know the rest of the story. Did they? Did they know how it was going to go? Did they know that he was going to turn into the wonder-working sideshow? Did they know that he was going to raise the dead to life? Did they know that he had the power of healing his hands? Did they know that he was going to die on a cross and be raised to life? No, we read that and we're like, well, of course they followed him. No, it took an insane amount of trust. Jesus came to these guys in the middle of them doing life, and he invites them to completely reorient their lives with one phrase, one invitation, 2 words: follow me. And you know what the wild thing is? They do it. The reason the story is in the Bible isn't to show us a story about a time this happened long ago. This is to show us what the invitation of Jesus is and what our response ought to be. And I wanted to dive down super, super deep into the invitation of Jesus this morning. All we are going to focus on this morning is those 2 words, follow me, because it is still the invitation today. And if we are going to understand Jesus at all, we need to understand his invitation to his followers. Because I'm assuming you're here because something piques your interest about Jesus. Whether you're all in, whether you're watching from a distance, there's some commonality that Jesus isn't horrifying to you, or you would have long since not been here. But what's fascinating is that Jesus offers this invitation, and I wonder what he's inviting us from and to, and I wonder why we should take him up on it. And so this phrase, follow me, I just want to jump right in. This phrase requires so much trust. And I think we can see that and we get that, but I recall, has anybody seen the Terminator, the original Terminator? Arnold Schwarzenegger reaches down and says, come with me if you want to live, you know? I'm terrible at a Schwarzenegger impression, but you get the idea. Some of you just know him now as the governor of California, so. Or like, you know, I mean, there's tons of invitations in culture. There's like Frodo to Samwise, come to Mordor, it'll be fun. We won't encounter any issues. You know, it's like following someone takes an insane amount of trust. And if I came to you right now, in the middle of this talk and was like, follow me, you'd be like, I mean, it depends on how well I know you. You know what I'm saying? It takes trust. But Jesus' invitation is just out there, follow me. And the invitation to follow me is fascinating because it required them and it requires us to leave something. You can't see Jesus' invitation to follow me without the invitation to leave something. And many of us struggle with this because we are wildly comfortable with what we know. We're super uncomfortable with the unknown. It is very rare for us to leave the known for the unknown unless you're Elsa and it's Frozen 2. Spoiler alert, she goes into the unknown, if you didn't know. But who's calling her? I don't know. You shall see. But very important. It's very rare for us. We don't like leaving the known for the unknown. It takes such a great amount of trust from us. We love the comforts of the known. And I want you to think about this in your life. Sometimes, I know this relates with you in some way. We like the comforts of the known, even if the known isn't really that great. Right? Even if we are willing to accept subpar or even if it's not good, just because we know it. And Jesus' invite to follow me means that these men would have to leave all that they knew. They didn't get to keep their old thing and embrace this new thing. They didn't get to keep doing the fishing thing, keep doing the hang out with dad on his boat thing, keep doing the mending net thing and doing this new thing. They had to leave this and do that. Jesus was calling them, inviting them to completely reorient their life. He was calling them to a reorientation of life. Here's the key. All that to say this. The question we have to ask is, but an orientation toward what? If Jesus is inviting us, if Jesus invited them to reorient their lives, leave what they were doing immediately to this other thing, what is he inviting us toward? And this is where the invitation of Jesus is so unique, because he didn't invite them from something to something. He invited them from something to someone. And what's fascinating is that every other religious system, legal system, what's the trade-off? You're saying like, hey, let's take this large, legal, demanding, burdensome, cumbersome rules, let's take those off and embrace these other legalistic, cumbersome, burdensome rules. Like take those old rules off, put these new rules on. And Jesus goes, no. Take that old thing off and follow me. He's not inviting us from something to something. He's inviting us from something to someone. And this is a totally different invitation than what you and I are used to and what they were used to in their context. He is inviting them to come to him and reorient their lives around him. Now, first century readers were a little bit detached from that, but they would have understood Jesus as a bit of a good teacher and something like a rabbi. Again, he hadn't been to official Jewish rabbinical school, but they would have understood him as a good teacher. And rabbis in that day had a thing called Talmudim, which was what we translate the word disciple, or probably a better interpretation of that word is apprentice. So it wasn't unusual for a rabbi or a good teacher to have under him disciples or apprentices. What was unique is normally those disciples or apprentices would choose their master, choose their teacher, because they desired whatever that teacher was doing or saying or the way they read the Torah. What's unique is Jesus shows up and he's like, you're with me, you follow me. Okay, let's find these other two. You hanging out with dad, follow me, and bring the other guy. He just comes in and selects his Talmudim. He comes in and chooses. He just throws down the invite and says, you come with me, disciple under me, apprentice under me. And what's so wild is Jesus doesn't say, hey, you four, go to that Bible study, read this helpful book, attend this seminar, get your junk together, and then come follow me. He says 2 words to begin, follow me. And they do. First century readers would have understood this idea of apprenticeship, that Jesus was inviting these men to apprentice under him. Now, we're sort of removed from apprentice world. There's some of that terminology in today's world, but we don't use that a ton. And so I just want to remind us what an apprentice's role or an apprentice's goal would be, especially in that day as a Talmudim under a teacher or a master. An apprentice's goal would be to be with the teacher or master, spend time with the teacher or master, and then second, to become like the teacher or master. Be with and spend time with the teacher or master, and then become like the teacher or master. So let's just make a very simple switch to say, okay, if Jesus is inviting them, and if this invite now goes out to us to follow me, and we are to become, and they were to become apprentices of Jesus, what should an apprentice of Jesus be expected to do? 2 things. 1, be with Jesus, spend time with Jesus, be with him, get to know him. Number 2, become like Jesus. An apprentice of Jesus, someone saying, I follow Jesus, we have the goal and role of being with Jesus and becoming like Jesus. And the reason understanding this invitation is so important is because the invitation to follow me is an invitation Jesus gives often. You read the Bible, you read the New Testament, Jesus gives it all the time. Come to me, all who are wearied and heavy laden. If you would like to follow me, you got to deny yourself, take up your cross, right? He uses this follow me language, this come follow me language so often when he's talking about what it is to know him. And so we have to understand this because it's the invitation he gave then, and it's the invitation that he gives us now. This apprenticeship, what he's inviting them to do, this apprenticeship is what it means to say that you or I follow Jesus. We are apprentices, disciples of Jesus. Now, in Western culture, we don't have a ton of processes, and we're not used to processes of becoming like a teacher, being molded into the image of. You may have a mentor that you want to learn some things from. Most of us, we have a lot of mentors, or we read a lot of books, or you have a lot of inputs coming from we don't have a ton of this understanding in our Western world of this process of becoming like someone else. It takes so much time, and it's a really weird concept in our instant access world. We want instant access to people, instant access to information, instant access to fake news, like whatever. Like we just want instant access to everything all the time. Like some of you, like you just microwave yesterday's coffee because it seems like it's too much of a chore to like warm up, like make a new one. It's like we love instant access things. We like the process of weight gain, but we want weight loss to be immediate. We want changes now. It's like, give me a shot, give me a pill, rip it off. I don't care. Like, I just want it gone. We want results now. We're a results now culture. That's why things like New Year's resolutions don't go awesome. And again, shame-free message. We'll talk about that a lot this morning here in a few minutes. Shame-free. But do you even remember your New Year's resolution? And if you do, how's it going? It's a struggle for the people that make it because we're just not used to a ton of long-term transformations. We want results now. But the process of apprenticeship takes time. To take the invitation of Jesus to follow me, listen, means that our entire life is now oriented around spending time with Jesus and becoming like Jesus. WWJD became a cliche years ago. It isn't such a bad question. We let it go with the bracelets, and I totally get it. But it's not a loony question, and I don't know that we ask it enough if we are becoming like him. To follow Jesus is to apprentice under Jesus. To call yourself a Christian is a claim that you apprentice under Jesus. You trust that he is the way and his way is better. So, let's get super practical. Because we can talk high level, follow me, and we can all leave here and go, I'll do better, I'll try harder. It's like, he's not calling you to something, he's calling you to someone. So here's what I want to look at. For those of us who have accepted the invitation to follow me from Jesus, for those of us who would call ourselves a Christian, an apprentice of Jesus, I have a simple question. How much do we look like Jesus? How much do we look like the one we are apprenticing under? If we've accepted the invitation of Jesus to follow me and apprentice under him, we spend time with him, become like him. How are we doing with that? And when I say look like him, I don't mean the dying for sins part. I don't even mean the perfection part. I'm not trying to get weird. Again, shame-free. I'm not trying to nitpick every little thing. I just mean, like, how are we doing in our day-to-day? How much do we look, act, and live like Jesus? Have we oriented our lives in such a way, as his early apprentices did, that it is evident to everyone who we apprentice under? Do we look so much like Jesus that it's evident to everyone who we apprentice under? So I want to look at a few practical things that Jesus modeled for his apprentices. And I'm not going to go big, sweeping, gigantic items. I'm going to kind of just look at like his way of life. Just the way that Jesus lived. And I want us to do something. I want us to kind of take an inventory, a quick life inventory. You can write these down. You can take a picture of them on the screen, or you can just think about them. You don't have to do either. But I really want us to take a life inventory to say, how much do we look like Jesus? And this is so important. This is a shame-free exercise. This is leading us somewhere. So there's going to be a bit of a disparity, but I want us to see that and live in it for a second. But this is not so that you feel terrible and you feel like you've got miles to go. We've all fallen short. But it's to show us that there might be a difference in the world that we're all living in and the come follow me world that Jesus is inviting us to. Okay? So here we go. Look at just a couple things about what Jesus modeled for his apprentices. Jesus didn't live a hurried life. Jesus didn't live a hurried life. Anyone live life in hurry mode? If you're bold enough, you can show your hand. If your hand's not up, you're probably maybe a liar, I don't know. Many of us, 90% of us, anyone other than me, constantly struggle to slow down. Is your standard response to the question, how are you? Is your standard response, I'm good, just really busy? So many of us can't catch a breath because our lives are moving so fast. We are so irritated at traffic. We are so irritated when we are standing in the longest line in a grocery store. We immediately pull out our phone, and if we can resist the urge to Instagram the moment, we are just jonesing to get out because we are such an instant access, must happen now society. And let me say to you, Jesus did not model this for us. This modern pace of life, which is leading to consistent depletion and exhaustion, is a product of worldly teaching, not Jesus' teaching. Jesus didn't live a hurried life. We wonder why we're tired, burnt out, never able to catch up on sleep and rest and our mental exhaustion. Maybe in this area, we are more an apprentice of the world than we are an apprentice of Jesus. Maybe. Next thing. Jesus deeply loved people. And this is church, so you would never admit this, right? Some of us don't even like people. That's 100%. Some of us just don't even like people. Jesus made time for people. He modeled a life of people over process, people over product. Jesus modeled, I heard it said that Jesus modeled that we should love people and use things. But in our modern world, so often we love things and use people. We have it completely upside down. Do you, like me, find it hard to even make time for people? And then for those of you who are going, man, I'm just killing it. I'm doing great. I have all time in the world for people. I'm an extrovert. I'm a people's person. I love people. I'm not talking about the people you like. I'm not talking about the people that look just like you, act just like you, share the same economic background as you do, have the same types of job interests that you do. I'm talking about people in desperate need of hope and love type people. Jesus made time for those people. Do we? Third thing, Jesus would spend hours alone in silence with God the Father. Jesus modeled a life of needing and enjoying silence and solitude with God. And many of us cannot stand to be alone. We can't stand to be alone with our thoughts. And for those of you who can, you loners in the room, for those of you who can and you love it, how are you spending that time? Is it like Jesus did? Maybe it is. We are so afraid in today's culture, so many of us, to be without our phone, our AirPods, Instagram, Spotify, Netflix, a friend. The thought of silence is terrifying to many of us, other than the moms in the room, which I totally respect. You're like, I would give a kidney for 10 minutes of just shh time. I get it. But for those of us who even think that silence is enough, I want to ask you, because I think this is important. There's a difference in shutting off the external noise and being able to shut off the internal noise. Even for those of you who just want some shh time, it's like, just for a minute, you can shut off the TV, you can shut off the things, you can go sit in nature, but how quiet is your mind? Are you able to enjoy silence and solitude with God, or does your mind just constantly fire? Because that internal noise is always on. Do we even know how to be like Jesus and in the midst of life and its demands, shut down, get alone, get quiet, quiet the external noise, quiet the internal noise, and deeply focus on and enjoy time with God? Not just checking off a box that I did a thing, but genuinely enjoying it, needing it, wanting it, craving it, and then not just wanting the things, but doing it? Are we more likely when we're exhausted and depleted to run to God or run to things that make our mind numb? To apprentice under Jesus, to reorient our life around him, means that we look and act like he did. Not some cultural adaptation, not some politically correct version. The actual Jesus of the New Testament, full of hope and love and purpose and peace. Jesus was content. Next thing. Jesus was content to live simply. He was content being homeless. He didn't chase after more and more, the next pair of shoes, the next job, the next house, the next deal, the next thing. Some of us don't even know how to operate without being busy. We need a carrot to chase. We need something in front of us. We need something to conquer. Jesus was so content with what he had. He didn't have to chase the next thing. It cleared his mind. It cleared his calendar to be purposeful and be mission-driven. He showed us how to live life content and joyful with the provision of God. Do you remember the Sermon on the Mount? Where if you've spent any time with me, you know my just obsession with the Sermon on the Mount. It is so ridiculously beautiful. And what I am blown away by is Jesus is out here just teaching, and he's like, don't be anxious about tomorrow. Like, tomorrow's got enough worry. And then Jesus goes, hey, don't even be worried about what you're going to wear. And he looks around and probably goes, look at the flowers of the field. They don't worry about that. And they're dressed even more beautifully than Solomon in all of his splendor. Jesus says, be content with what you have. You don't have to chase down, track down, be in the pursuit of more, more, more. Do we model Jesus well in being content with what we have? And the last one that's a freebie, Jesus modeled keeping the Sabbath. How's that going? A day, not a day off. I read a book recently that said that a day off is a bastardized Sabbath. Like a really legitimate day of nothing but rest and worship, and zero gets put in there that does not meet one of those criteria. So none of this is said, listen. So I think some of us are seeing the disparity. Probably you're looking at me, seeing the disparity between my life and this other one. But here's what I want us to understand. This is not an exercise in shame, but to simply show the difference between the world that many of us live in and the come follow me world that Jesus is inviting us into. And when we reorient our lives around Jesus and apprentice under him, I want you to hear this because I think many of us have given up on it. It is possible to look like Jesus in this life. Many of us, it seems so far away, we're just like, all right, I'm going to do my best, read my Bible, go to church, do the things. And we've sort of given up the pursuit of becoming like Jesus, living as he did. But we actually can learn to slow down, to enjoy the day-to-day, to not live high to high, to have limitless joy, contentment, love, and peace. All of those things are possible here and now. And so here's where we're going to get even more practical, because I think I'm going to try to, as best I can, reach into your heart, because I had to deeply reach into mine to understand why this is such a conflict. Because I think we all say, that sounds great. I mean, who reads about Jesus and goes, forget that guy, he's the worst? Every religion on the planet has to account for Jesus. Jesus is beautiful. The way he loved people, included people, invited people, went after people. He went after the religious establishment and then went after the sinner. He's absolutely stunning in what he teaches and the way he lives. We all like that. It all sounds good, a life of love and joy and peace and connectedness and really being like Jesus. But if we're honest, and this is where we're gonna kind of hit home a little bit, it just all sounds like so much work. If we're real, all of that sounds great, but it sounds like so much work because we're already exhausted, we're already depleted, we're already conflicted. And it's like, why do I want to add another thing that's going to just make that more complicated. And I am convinced that most of us in this room, if not all of us, we do actually want Jesus. That's why I said it's a shame-free message. Like I'm we genuinely want him. We want peace, we want love, we want contentment, we want him. But the thought of reorienting our lives sounds like so much work on top of our already busy schedules and distracted minds. We are so conflicted, many of us, with the invitation to come follow me because it means leaving the old way behind and reorienting to a completely new one. And that sounds like work. And if we're honest, many of us find comfort in our old way. So I just want to ask a question. How's that old way working for us? How's that old way going? Does everybody just feel so rested, so much joy, just peace? Doesn't matter. Like, you're just so peaceful. Like, someone could come and like demand your life from you being a Christian. You're like, I'm good. It's to live is Christ, to die is gain. It's like, it's whatever. I mean, like, how's that way working for us? Do we all just feel so rested, so just ready to go take on the world? Is the chasing, striving, stress, anxiety, rushness, the pounding coffee multiple times throughout the day just to have energy for the day? Like, the way, how is it when we find that all of our self-care methods aren't working anymore? That vacation didn't really leave us more rested than when we went. It just was filled with busyness and things to do. And then we get to it and we all realize that even when all of that's quiet, we still live with this deep internal restlessness. But here's the catch. I don't believe it's that we don't want Jesus. Here's what I think it is. This is the important part of this entire message, other than the invitation to follow me. I don't think it's that we don't want Jesus. I believe the resounding issue in this room and in this world today is that we do want Jesus and something else. In our heart, we want him. But we also are too afraid to leave the old way behind. We want him and we want something else. So Jesus gives a little more detail around what it looks like to come to him in Matthew chapter 11, and I want to explore that before we close. Because in Matthew chapter 11, he gives us a little more clarity on who this call is for to come and what it looks like to come to him and to follow him. And in Matthew 11:28, this is what he says, and let this just sit on you here. Jesus says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you" what? Rest. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find" what? Rest for your souls. "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And again, it's church, so we don't try to like call these things out, but many of us read that, know that, hear that, and we go, that's not my experience. I mean, maybe you're so bold to say that Jesus is full of junk, because this isn't the life that so many of us are living. And it's not because we don't want Jesus. But Jesus is saying, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. You're not taking off the trappings of this world and all its burden and putting on this new burden. He's saying you're taking off this thing. And the imagery that he gives is a yoke. And I'm sure not every one of you grew up on a farm where you used oxen to plow things. So I'm going to humor you a little bit and discuss like a yoke is this gigantic wooden thing that unites two oxen together, and they pull a singular plow for a singular job. So these two oxen get on this wooden beam and pull the plow together. Jesus is giving this idea of yoking with us, taking on who he is and his way, and he says that's easy and that's light. But here's the thing. I wonder if we're so exhausted and we find Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 11 really hard to believe because so many of us are trying to be triple yoked. I wonder how many of us are attempting to yoke up with Jesus while also being yoked up with the world. You see, Jesus' yoke isn't an add-on to the yoke you already carry. It's unyoking yourself from the slave master that is this world and its demands, and it is linking up and yoking yourselves to someone who promises rest and comfort and joy and life to the fullest. But the problem is that many of us, when we leave these doors, we immediately go to our next thing. And some of us in this room right now, we're already thinking through our to-do list for the day. We're already checking social media. We're already kind of transitioning mentally to the next thing because that's just how we're wired. Dallas Willard says this. He says, our mistake is to think that following Jesus consists in loving our enemies, going the second mile, turning the other cheek, suffering patiently and hopefully, while living the rest of our lives just as everyone around us does. It's a strategy bound to fail. I'm going to read it again. Listen to what he says. Our mistake is to think that following Jesus consists in loving our enemies, going the second mile, turning the other cheek, suffering patiently and hopefully, while living the rest of our lives just as everyone else around us does. It's a strategy bound to fail. In his book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which if you haven't read it, you should, by John Mark Comer, he boils it down to this. If you want to experience the life of Jesus, you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. It's not enough to just think you got saved back then that one time and you're good, you got your fire insurance, like it's good to go, everybody's all free and clear. To be an apprentice of Jesus is to be with him and become like him. But so many of us, we're triple yoked and we're wondering why we walk through life so motion sick, so vomiting at every turn. We can't get rest. We can't get our minds quieted. We can't slow down because we are just getting run by two rival kingdoms, and we're trying to do a thing that Jesus says is impossible, which is to serve two masters. The world is a demanding slave master that says your worth is in what you produce. Do more, go harder, check more boxes, be more valuable in your workplace, do more with your family, be more here, be great here, do your self-help, be really healthy, but also work really hard, but then also play really hard, but then also find balance, but balance is impossible. And the world is just coming at you saying, do, do, do. And then you have the yoke of Jesus where he's saying something entirely different because he's showing you that your worth isn't in doing, 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 and in what you produce, but Jesus is saying that your worth is infinite because he created it all and there is no worth unless he says there is. And he has said that there is worth in the people that he gave his life for on the cross. And for us, if we're not careful, the world's way seems great because it's what everybody else is doing. They seem to be making money. They seem to be happy at a distance. They seem to be this. They seem to be that. But then we look at Jesus in Matthew 11, who's promising light, burden-free, an enjoyment of life, life to the full, genuine soul rest. And we go, I just don't know how to do this and that. The prescription for how to do this and that is here in Matthew 4. Follow me. Leave your old thing. You can't keep the fishing. You can't keep the doing. You can't keep the going. You can't stay on that boat. You've got to come out, follow Jesus, reorient your life around what it would look like to apprentice under Jesus, genuinely spending time getting to know him, and then orienting your life to become like him. If you want to experience the life of Jesus, the joy, the peace, the goodness, the mercy, the way that he seems to have limitless energy for people, and then he has no chill in going completely separate in solitude and alone, saying, hey, my friend Lazarus is about to die. I'm good. I'm not in a hurry. He's fine. I'm going to stay here with my friends. Like, he has such a beautiful way about him to not be hurried by anyone, and we all love it and respect it, but we're not willing to take on his lifestyle to see what that actually is to achieve it. So the invitation for us today is this: follow Jesus. Unyoke from the world, yoke up with him, reorient your life around him, and only in that will you actually have the deepest parts of you healed, rested, and at peace. Don't orient your life around something, orient your life around someone. And here's the final question: who are you apprenticing under? Jesus says you can't serve two masters. It's either Jesus or the world. Who are you apprenticing under? And here's my challenge for you. I really want you to think about this. You can think about it now, you can think about it later, you can think about it in the morning, whenever it is. My challenge is for you to think through what would it look like if you actually oriented your life around Jesus? You didn't try to do both of the yoking things, but you just 100% oriented your life around Jesus. You just followed him. You just left the old way and just followed him. You don't use him as a self-help guide. You don't come to him to check a box. You genuinely follow him and orient your life as if your primary objective was to be with him and be like him, like an apprentice should. And for some of you today, you don't know Jesus at all. And I'm here to tell you, he is so worth it. Because everything in your life is trying to hand you more. And Jesus is saying, your back can't take it. Yoke up with me. My shoulders are substantially stronger than yours. And you know the beautiful thing about Jesus? That restlessness that we feel, that exhaustion that we feel, that limitedness that we feel, that incompleteness that we feel, Jesus wants that and allows that, because what it does is it points us to the need for one who could relieve us of our burden and breathe life on our weary bones. We know in our heart that we are imperfect. We don't even measure up to our own standard of living. And what we feel there is sin, a separation, a brokenness, a distortedness in our soul, something not right. And Jesus, what's so beautiful, listen, Jesus offers shame-free living. Jesus offers complete forgiveness through his death, his life, and his resurrection. As he, in one moment, takes on all the sin that ever would be forgiven on the cross, and he takes it, it's done, it's over, and then he's raised to life. Nobody took his life from him. He willingly laid it down. Now, he sits at the right hand of the Father, highly exalted, above everything. He can trample the world in a moment. And you know what's wild about Jesus? He doesn't say, hey, I did that thing for you back there that one time, saving you. I did all I needed to do to show you your value. Now you do your part. Jesus says, I gave everything to show how valuable you were, and I deeply want to yoke up with you and walk through life. That's the beauty of the Christmas season when we say God with us. Jesus says, I want to do this with you. I love you. Can you fathom that Jesus wants to spend time with you? He doesn't only shoulder our sin on the cross, but he walks through life with us co-laboring with us to bear the burden that we cannot. So I ask again, who do you apprentice under? Because you will end up looking more like the one that you orient your life around. Is it the world or is it Jesus? Let's pray. God, we love you. We offer up ourselves to you, Father. We just thank you so much. I thank you for your way. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the love that you have for us. I thank you so much. Right now, Father, I pray for the gift of teaching, not good communication, but the teaching, the power of the Holy Spirit that can do things that my words cannot. I pray that you would penetrate our heart. I pray that every single person in this room would follow you. I pray that every person would take on what it means to leave it and follow you, to leave the old way and embrace not just a new thing, but you. So, Father, show us. Show us, Lord. May we be a church that orients our life around following you, apprenticing after you. I can't fathom what this world would look like if we here at Netcast had a church full of people that said, to heck with the world's way. I'm done yoking up with that nonsense. We 100% want to be like Jesus. Not the idea of Jesus, not just read books about Jesus, not just Jesus as it impacts my life, but 100% we want to look like him, value what he values, do what he did, think how he thinks, love how he loves, healed how he healed, call people into relationship as he did. Father, we want that. Do it, God, please. Through the power of your Holy Spirit, in the name of your Son, Jesus, do it in our midst, something we couldn't even fathom, not because we are some special weird group of people, but because we are humble enough to get on our face and say we cannot bear the burden of this world or all these demands. We have to come to one who has taken it all on himself, on our behalf, on a cross, and is now offering to co-labor with us. We trust your Son, Jesus, completely, Father. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.